What should a writer consider before deciding that their idea is actually a series?
So there are multiple ways of writing a book, obviously. But when you're thinking about a series, you can kind of break it down into three general categories. There's the serial, which is massively done in fantasy, romantasy, that sort of genre. It's done in others too, but best done there, where you've got the same primary characters that you're traveling through
Mhm.
2, 3, 5, 10 books, whatever it is. And a serial needs all of the books that you write in a series really do need to stand alone because it's
Oh,
brutal to have cliffhangers. You can get away with it once, but if you do
uh-huh.
more than once in a series, you're going to piss off your readers. So I don't
Oh,
recommend it. So the main story does need to stand alone. So if you think of a serial in terms of adventures, say it's an
mhm,
RPG and you're on an adventure campaign, role play game for anybody who's
mhm,
not a game,
mhm.
that allows for a complete book or a complete story that ends, but it's still like there's more to be told with your characters and
Yes.
you're traveling beyond your story with your characters. They have a bigger journey than just the journey of that first book or any
Mhm.
one book. The second type is more commonly found in romance. For example, that's the crossover. That's when you build a small town or you build a knitting group or, you have a winery and the various employees and the two main characters who are that couple for that book. You might see them in other books and the world is populated by familiar characters and your locations. So the crossover works really well in both contemporary and historical romance. It can be done in fantasy, but it's less commonly done in fantasy because in fantasy, we tend to like to go on epic quests. And that means we need to be with our main characters. Side quests feel too peripheral in fantasy.
Mm,
And then the third kind is episodic, and that is more traditionally done in mystery. So mysteries can do episodics, and episodics, the classic is Sherlock Holmes. You have your main characters. That is a completely standalone in that it can be read out of order, and you're not
mm.
missing too much by reading them out of order. I
Right.
prefer always to read in order, but it's not going to break the reader to get them out of order. So when you're looking at your story, you're always going to want to more or less know what genre you're writing in. And then with that, it will lend itself more toward one rather than another type of series.
When writing a series, how do you balance the threads of the individual book with the overall arc of the series?
The story that you're telling, especially if you think of it in terms of fantasy role play games, that sort of thing, think of each book as its own complete adventure, but the character has more to learn. So,
Yeah.
with the plot that wraps up completely, that's great. You're done with that story. Your character has been on this journey, the journey from the beginning to the end of that book, doing the thing that they needed to learn. There is still more to learn. There's this journey that crosses all five, but allow that to breathe, allow it to rule out, allow your character to not have to learn everything all at once.
Yeah.
Can really embrace this piece of it. And then that leads to another piece that unfurls and another. And so each one builds on the previous ones, which is why serials have to be read in order. But as far as the action and the plot, that's all self contained. So it really is character threads that you're pulling through.
How much backstory do you need to reintroduce in books 2 and 3 and 4?
I would say don't ever assume that your reader knows it, although in a serial, they have to have read the other ones first. Backstory is what I call lawn furniture. So, lawn furniture at its worst is blocking and clogging the view, and it's stuff that you trip over at night. At its best, it disappears into the scenery and it's just a comfortable place to stop, rest, regroup, and then, get your energy up to move forward. So, info dumps are terrible lawn furniture. The best way to open a fantasy or something that is plot heavy is generally right in the middle of a thing. So
Mhm.
drop your reader into the action. And as your character is sort of wading their way through this thing, your reader is getting the lay of the land. They're figuring out what's happening. And then if you need to give a backstory or some context for your character, that can be either internal exposition or in dialogue from somebody else. So drop them in, hook them with the action, and then tell them what it is that they just saw and lead them toward the rest of the plot. When you're in book 2, 3, 4, there are a couple of devices. Again, look at dropping them into action and using that action as a way to sort of call back to what the character dealt with in the previous book. You definitely want to minimize the lawn furniture, the clunky kind, and really try to minimize info dumps because that's where people's eyes glaze over.